Reddit, what's the most stupid thing you've heard people say next to you? Alright, this happened about 2 months ago and I still can't believe it was real. So my buddy Mike invited me out to this semi-divey bar after work. Not a fancy place, think sticky floors, dollar wings, decent beer. We're sitting at the bar catching up when this group of 4 guys takes the high-top table right behind us. They're loud enough that we can hear every word. At first, it's just your typical guy talk, fantasy football, work complaints, who they think can outrank who. Whatever. But then the guy in the red hoodie, clearly the self-appointed genius of the group, says, "Bro, I've got this surefire investment plan. I'm gonna double my money this month. Maybe triple." Now, I'm nosy, so I half-turn my head expecting crypto or some startup pitch. But nope. Scratch-offs, man. Scratch-offs, he says, all wide-eyed. I got $10K in savings just sitting there. I'm taking the whole chunk, buying nothing but $50 scratchers. You hit a couple winners, you're good. At this point, my beer is halfway to my mouth and I almost spit it out. My buddy Mike looks at me like, are we seriously hearing this? His friends start laughing, assuming he's joking. But hoodie guy is dead serious. No, listen. The odds are better when you buy in bulk. Like, you buy 1, sure, whatever. You buy 200? You have to hit big at least once or twice. Statistically guaranteed, dude. I'm mentally screaming that's not how probability works, but obviously I say nothing. Then, the best part happens, his friend in the blue cap chimes in with, "Yo, that kinda makes sense. Like, bulk discounts but for luck." What? Mike and I are frozen in our seats watching this human train wreck unfold. Within 10 minutes, hoodie guy is convincing all of them to join in on his investment. They start calculating on someone's phone how much they'd make after expenses like they're running an actual hedge fund. Finally, one guy hesitates and says, "But can you even cash out that many winners at once? Won't they think it's, like, illegal?" Hoodie guy confidently goes, "Bro, I've already Googled it. You just spread it out at different stores. It's called diversifying your portfolio." I swear to God, Mike had to physically grab my arm to stop me from turning around and setting them straight. Anyway, we paid our tab and left before our brain cells could take more damage. As we were walking out, we heard hoodie guy say, "I'll go to the bank tomorrow, pull out the 10K. Let's ***ing go, boys." Asterisk. Sometimes I wonder if they actually did it. And sometimes I really hope they didn't. But based on what I heard that night, I'm not so sure. Let me take you back to last summer, and the most awkward wedding reception I have ever witnessed. So my coworker, let's call him Dan, was getting married to his longtime fiancée, Sarah. I'd worked with Dan for about 5 years, nice guy, quiet, pretty normal. Sarah was sweet too. They'd been together something like 7 years before finally tying the knot. The wedding was beautiful. Big outdoor venue, floral arch, string quartet, the whole Pinterest package. The ceremony went off without a hitch. We all cheered when they kissed and walked back down the aisle. Then came the reception. Now, I was seated at a table near the front, close to the family. I didn't really know anyone at my table, mostly extended family and a couple of Dan's old college friends. Across from me sat an older guy, probably in his mid-60s, drinking scotch like it was water. Turns out this was Dan's father. At first, he seemed harmless enough. Made polite small talk, asked how I knew Dan. But as the night went on, and the scotch kept flowing, he got louder, and a lot less filtered. It started during dinner. Someone at our table asked him something about the ceremony. He scoffed and said, loud enough for most of us to hear, "Well, this whole thing is for show. Let's hope it sticks this time." I remember blinking like, wait, what? A younger woman at our table, probably Dan's cousin, nervously laughed and tried to change the subject. "No dice." He kept going. "You know, she's not exactly a saint," he said, gesturing with his glass towards Sarah, who was across the room chatting with guests. Dan forgave too easily, if you ask me. At this point, the entire table is dead silent. No one knows what to say. I'm gripping my water glass, ready to bolt. Then came the moment that will be burned into my memory forever. The DJ announced the couple's first dance. The crowd gathered around the dance floor, and Dan and Sarah took their places, swaying to some cheesy Ed Sheeran song. That's when Dan's dad, still seated at our table but now very drunk, says, in a voice that absolutely carried across our entire section, "Well, at least this one won't cheat, right?" You could hear a pin drop. Every head at our table whipped toward him. Some people nearby actually gasped. I looked at the couple. Dan's back was to us, but Sarah must have heard it, because I saw her shoulders visibly tense. Even worse, Dan's mom, who was sitting at the next table, heard it too. She stood up and rushed over to him, hissing something I couldn't hear. Dan's dad just shrugged and poured himself another drink. Now, the rest of the night was pure chaos. You could feel the tension in the air like a thick fog. Dan and Sarah's dance ended awkwardly, and they both looked rattled. Sarah disappeared for about 20 minutes after that. Dan looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. I later heard bits and pieces through office gossip. Apparently, Sarah had cheated on Dan a couple years prior, but they'd stayed together and gone to counseling. Only close family knew, or so they thought. Clearly, Dan's dad was not on board with the whole forgive and move on thing, and he picked the worst possible moment to air his opinion. By the time dessert was served, Dan's dad had been quietly escorted out by one of Dan's uncles. The vibe at the reception never really recovered. I left early, along with about half the other guests. Here's the kicker. A month later, I heard that Dan had gone no contact with his dad. They even postponed their honeymoon because of all the fallout. So yeah, the next time someone asks me, "What's the dumbest thing you've heard someone say?" I have my answer locked and loaded. At least this one won't cheat, right? At his own son's wedding, in front of everyone. Some people really don't know when to shut up. This one still blows my mind. A few years ago, during the peak of the whole Dogecoin craze, I was visiting my buddy Jake. He lives in one of those apartment complexes where everyone knows each other, lots of backyard BBQs, casual chats on the stoop, that kind of place. We were hanging out on his balcony having a couple beers when his neighbor from downstairs, let's call him Todd, comes out all excited. Todd is a character. Early 30s, always wearing those crypto-themed t-shirts. You know the type. Thinks he's the next tech billionaire but works as a part-time barista. He sees us and yells up, "Boys, today's the day? I'm making moves." Of course we ask, "What moves?" Todd grins like he just cracked the Da Vinci Code. Just took out a second mortgage. Dumped it all into Doge. It's going to the moon, man. Now Jake and I look at each other, trying not to laugh. We think he's joking. But Todd pulls out his phone and starts showing us screenshots. He wasn't joking. He had literally just taken out $75,000 in equity on his condo and spent every penny on Dogecoin. At its peak price. It can only go up, he says. Everyone's saying it. Elon's tweeting about it. If I sell at the top, I'll double or triple my money, easy. Jake tries to gently talk him down. Dude, crypto's super volatile. What if it drops? Todd waves him off. You don't get it. This is the future of money. Banks are dead. Fiat is dead. Doge is the next Bitcoin. I'm sitting there thinking, holy hell, this man is about to ruin his life based on some Twitter memes. Then, and here's the kicker, Todd starts trying to recruit us. Bro, you should pull some cash and get in now. I got in late, but you could still ride this wave. It's basic investing, you gotta risk big to win big. Basic investing. Right? Jake politely declines. I just shake my head. Todd shrugs and says, suit yourselves. But when I'm rich, I'm buying a Lumbo and moving to Bali. We finished our beers and went inside. A week later, Dogecoin tanked. Hard. Todd avoided everyone for a month. I later heard through the complex grapevine that he had to sell his car and was trying to renegotiate his mortgage payments. To this day, whenever I visit Jake, we still say basic investing anytime someone makes a bad decision. So yeah, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard someone say next to me. I took out a second mortgage to buy Dogecoin. It can only go up. Famous last words. Oh man, I've got one that will haunt my family BBQs for years. A couple of summers ago, we had our big annual family barbecue at my aunt and uncle's place. Huge gathering, cousins, extended relatives, neighbors, the whole works. My cousin Sarah brought her new boyfriend, Chad, yes, that was really his name, who none of us had met yet. Now, I'm one of those guys who loves sitting back with a drink and people watching at these things. That day, I got more entertainment than I bargained for. Chad was one of those guys who can't stop talking once he starts. Loud, super confident, and absolutely sure he's the smartest guy in the room. He somehow got into a conversation with a group of my uncles about space exploration. I was about 2 feet away, grabbing another burger, when I heard it. You guys do know the moon landing was fake, right? It was totally filmed in Canada. Cue record scratch. One of my uncles, bless him, politely asked, Canada? Without missing a beat, Chad nodded sagely. Yeah. The Canadian tundra looks exactly like the moon. That's why they picked it. Makes way more sense than using a Hollywood soundstage. I stood frozen mid-bite, wondering if I was hearing things. But he wasn't done. And the best part, Chad continued, lowering his voice as if delivering classified intel, they used polar bears in some of the shots. You know, to simulate space hazards. I nearly choked on my burger. My uncle, now clearly amused, asked, wait, are you saying there are polar bears on the moon? Chad waved his hand dismissively. No. Obviously not. But they used the footage to make it look more dangerous, you know? Like space is unpredictable. At this point, a small crowd had gathered and my cousin Sarah looked like she wanted to sink into the earth. She tried to change the subject, but Chad kept going on about how NASA hired Canadian film crews and that Stanley Kubrick probably wasn't even involved. It was all Canadian craftsmanship. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked, so did NASA also film the low-gravity jumps and lunar rover footage in Canada? Chad looked at me, deadly serious, and said, of course. They used trampolines and wires. You can look it up. I couldn't. I just couldn't. Later that night, a few of us checked his Facebook. Full of flat earth memes, space is fake posts, and a proud caption under his profile pic, Truth Seeker. Sarah dumped him 2 weeks later. And now every family barbecue, someone brings up Canadian polar bears on the moon to see who can say it with a straight face the longest. Mine happened at the grocery store, of all places. I was in the frozen foods aisle grabbing a pizza when I ended up behind 2 women chatting loudly. They were parked right in front of the freezer door I needed, so I waited, pretending to browse. One of them picked up a bag of frozen peas, then turned to her friend and said, Ugh, I hope these didn't melt and refreeze. You know you can't freeze water twice. It breaks the water molecules. I blinked. Her friend, looking concerned, nodded and replied, Oh, I didn't know that. That's why refrozen stuff is bad, right? The first woman doubled down. Yeah, the molecules get damaged and it makes the food toxic. My mom always told me that. At this point, I couldn't help it, I snorted. Loudly. Both of them turned to glare at me, so I quickly pretended to be very, very interested in the frozen corn. But the woman wasn't done. She grabbed a second bag of peas, inspected it like a diamond, and said, You can just tell. If the ice crystals look weird, the molecules are broken. I had to leave the aisle. I didn't trust myself not to start laughing out loud. When I told my girlfriend later, she said I should have corrected them. But honestly, I think the universe is funnier when some people believe in molecule damage due to double freezing. I can't believe this one actually happened to me. It was a first date. We matched on a dating app, and after a few days of good conversation, I suggested we meet for dinner. She seemed smart, funny, and had great pictures of herself traveling Greece, Italy, even Hawaii. Looked promising. The date started fine. We met at this chill Italian restaurant, ordered drinks, and started chatting about travel, her favorite topic, apparently. She started talking about how she loved Europe but hated flying long distances. I nodded sympathetically. I get it, those 8 to 10 hour flights can be brutal. But then she said, completely seriously. And that's why planes don't fly over the ocean. There's nothing to hold them up if the engines stop. At first, I thought she was joking. I smiled and chuckled. But then I saw her face dead serious. She continued. It's true. My aunt told me. If the plane goes over the ocean and the engines fail, it just drops because there's no ground below to create lift. I blinked. Was this a prank? Hidden camera? I asked, you know, planes fly by generating lift from the wings, right? The ground doesn't hold them up. She shook her head. No, it's called the ground effect. Planes fly better when they're over land. That's why they go around oceans. I tried to gently explain that planes cross oceans all the time. Ever heard of transatlantic flights? She frowned and said, Well, maybe some do, but they take special routes really close to the coast. Over the deep parts, it's too dangerous. Plus, if you crash, there's no rescue. At this point, I just sipped my drink and mentally checked out. No point arguing. The rest of the date went downhill fast. Every topic somehow returned to aviation conspiracies. Chemtrails. Secret no-fly zones over the Pacific. How birds are more advanced than airplanes because they know not to fly too far from land. After dinner, I thanked her for the evening and noped out hard. Blocked her on the app the next day. The kicker? When I told this story to my pilot friend later, he just sighed and said, "We literally fly over the ocean for hours every single day. If the ground held us up, we'd be in big trouble." Moral of the story, never trust a first date's aviation science based on their aunt's advice. This happened a couple of months ago and I still can't believe it. I was at a big electronics store, finally replacing my old wired headphones with a nice pair of Bluetooth ones. You know how it goes, they have a whole wall of options, so I was taking my time reading the boxes. Next to me was this guy in his mid-30s, clearly trying to impress his girlfriend. He picked up a pair of budget Bluetooth earbuds and said loudly, "Nah babe, these won't work. They don't have Wi-Fi." His girlfriend looked confused. "Aren't they Bluetooth?" Then came the kicker. "Yeah, but Bluetooth needs internet. Otherwise it can't connect to your phone." At this point, I looked up, thinking I must have heard wrong. She asked, "But I thought Bluetooth works without internet?" He rolled his eyes as if she was the dumb one. No. That's a common mistake. Bluetooth uses the Wi-Fi signal to talk to your phone. If you don't have Wi-Fi, they won't work. I was frozen in place, trying not to laugh. The poor sales associate standing nearby politely stepped in and said, "Actually, sir, Bluetooth works through direct pairing. It doesn't need internet or Wi-Fi." But the guy doubled down. "Trust me, I work in IT. I know how this stuff works." At that point, the associate just smiled and backed off. I couldn't blame him. You can't argue with someone that confident and wrong. Meanwhile, the guy proceeded to grab a $200 pair of Wi-Fi compatible headphones, all while lecturing his girlfriend about wireless protocols like he was giving a TED Talk. I left that aisle before I lost it completely. Later, I saw the same couple at the checkout. The girlfriend was still asking if the headphones would work on the plane without Wi-Fi. The guy told her, "Of course not. You need Wi-Fi in the air." I truly hope she returned them. This happened at my local dog park a few weeks ago. I still crack up thinking about it. It was a sunny Saturday and I took my lab mix, Rocky, to the park to burn off some energy. It was packed, dozens of dogs running around, owners chatting in little groups. You know the vibe. I brought my backpack with some water and a pack of beef jerky because I knew we'd be there a while. Now, Rocky loves making friends and he quickly started playing with a big, very muscular pit bull named Bella. Bella's owner, a woman probably in her early 30s, was sitting nearby on a bench loudly talking to another dog owner. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard her say proudly, "Bella is vegan by choice. She's never liked meat. She refuses it." My ears perked up. She continued, "Yeah, when she was a puppy, I offered her chicken, beef, even turkey. Wouldn't touch it. But she loves quinoa and kale. It's her choice." The other dog owner politely smiled, looking skeptical. But Vegan Lady was on a roll. People don't understand that dogs can be just as conscious about their food as humans. Bella is very intuitive. She knows what's healthy for her. At this point, Rocky and Bella were wrestling nearby. I unzipped my backpack and opened my beef jerky. The smell must have wafted over because suddenly Bella's head shot up. She made a beeline straight for me. Vegan Lady noticed and laughed nervously. "Oh, she's just curious, she won't want it." Except Bella very much wanted it. She practically tackled me trying to get at the jerky. I had to stand up and hold the bag over my head while this vegan by choice pit bull jumped, whined, and tried every trick in the book to snag a piece. Vegan Lady rushed over, trying to call her off. "Bella, no, you don't want that." Bella clearly disagreed. I finally handed Rocky a piece to distract them both, and Bella inhaled it like she hadn't eaten in weeks. The look on Vegan Lady's face was priceless, part horror, part denial. "Oh, she must be going through a phase," she stammered. "She usually hates meat." "Sure, lady." Bella kept licking her chops and staring at my backpack for the next 10 minutes. As we left the park, I overheard Vegan Lady on the phone telling someone, "I think she's just really stressed today. That's the only reason she ate it." I've never seen someone so committed to their narrative in the face of overwhelming evidence. Meanwhile, I bring extra jerky to the park now. Bella's a regular customer. This happened at a work happy hour that I will never forget. I work for a mid-sized tech company, and a couple times a year we do these casual happy hours where the whole department gets together at a bar. Everyone's a few drinks in, people are loosening up, great for office gossip and the occasional golden quote. That night, we somehow got onto the topic of space travel. Blame a new SpaceX launch that had been in the news. People were tossing around random facts about the ISS and Mars missions. Then one coworker, we'll call him Dave, decided to join the conversation. Dave is one of those guys who always sounds confident but is frequently dead wrong. He's the well-actually type who corrects people about things he knows nothing about. And he goes, "Well, one thing they'll never solve is the pregnancy issue." Someone asks, "What do you mean?" Dave leans in, very serious. "You can't get pregnant in space. It's impossible. No gravity means the eggs can't float to the right place." I actually choked on my beer. Another coworker, trying to be polite, says, I don't think gravity inside your body works like that." Dave waves him off. "No, seriously. Without gravity, nothing stays in place. The whole reproductive system can't function properly up there." At this point, the whole table is listening. Someone gently points out that fluids and cells move inside the human body due to muscle contractions, not gravity. Dave doubles down. "No way. I read about this. In space, your whole body changes. The eggs would just drift around. Plus, how would the baby stay in place to grow?" A chorus of "That's not how that works" followed. People tried explaining basic anatomy to him for about 15 minutes, but he wasn't having it. Finally, one of the women at the table just said, "Dave, women have been pregnant underwater in zero-G simulations, even on parabolic flights. Gravity is not required for pregnancy." Dave's response? "I still don't buy it. I mean, until I see a space baby, I won't believe it's possible." And that was the end of that conversation. Now anytime someone says something dumb at work, we call it a space baby moment. Thanks, Dave. This happened on a camping trip with some old college friends last fall. We were sitting around the campfire after a long day of hiking, beers in hand, just chatting about random stuff. One of our buddies, we'll call him Mike, is known for being, let's say, enthusiastically misinformed on certain topics. At one point, someone mentioned how oxygen feeds fire, which led to a whole mini discussion about combustion and how oxygen tanks are dangerous because of that. And then Mike chimes in loudly and confidently, "That doesn't make any sense. We breathe oxygen. If it was flammable, we'd be on fire all the time." The whole group went quiet for a beat. We thought he was joking. Nope. Mike kept going. "Think about it. We literally have oxygen in our lungs right now. If oxygen could burn, we'd catch fire the moment someone lit a match." One of the guys tried to explain that oxygen itself isn't flammable. It supports combustion. You need fuel and heat too. Oxygen just makes fire burn hotter and faster. Mike wasn't having it. "No, man. That's just what they tell you. If oxygen could make things burn, we wouldn't be able to breathe it safely. It's common sense." At this point, half of us were stifling laughter, and the other half were trying to rescue the conversation with actual science. But Mike dug in deeper, eventually declaring, "If you guys want to believe that you're walking around filled with flammable gas, that's on you." Someone, bless him, finally said, "Mike, please don't become a chemistry teacher." Now, months later, whenever one of us says something dumb in the group chat, someone replies with, "Oxygen can't burn. Bro." Mike still hasn't lived it down. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And of course, tell us in the comments, what's the most stupid thing you've ever heard someone say next to you? We can't wait to read your stories.